AskReddit by false hovercraft 669. What treasures that we 100% know existed still haven't been found? The shipwreck of Fleur de la Marche. Sunk with the equivalent of $2 billion in today's money. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/floor. This one and the treasure fleet are the only ones that seem super plausible to me, because ocean. You know, of all the lost treasures that I learned about from that book my 7-year-old bought at the Scholastic Book Fair a few months back. Portrait of a Young Man by Raphael. Missing since the end of WW2, all signs point to it having been sold for traveling money by Nazi Hans Frank. I'm convinced that the majority of missing artwork from WW2 is held by private collectors. Like that missing Picasso painting that just happened to be spotted in the living room of the former First Lady of the Philippines. The 1715 Spanish treasure fleet wreck will almost certainly never be 100% recovered, meaning there's still some out there. There is a pretty aggressive company with a fleet of underwater drones, and researchers find treasure ships banked by private investment partnerships. Deep Ocean Search recovered tens of tons of silver coins from City of Cairo, the deepest ocean treasure recovery, and turned it over to the UK government to get their salvage share. https://www.deepoceansarc.com/project/steam-ship-city-of-cairo/ There are some amazing Spanish treasure wrecks, but their government says they are warships, and the gold and silver they took from native peoples and enslaved to extract more is government property. So professional treasure hunters are not focusing on finding those. The missing Fabergé eggs. There are about 7 still missing, and only an old black and white photo remains of some of them, along with their descriptions. 7 eggs in the Imperial series are missing. 1886 The hen with sapphire pendant egg, last seen 1922. 1888 The cherub with chariot egg, last seen 1922, may have been exhibited in New York City in 1934. 1889 The Necessaire egg, sold by Wardski in 1952, has not been seen since. 1897 The Mauve egg, photo frame surprise still extant. 1902 The Empire Nephrite egg, the provenance of the found nephrite egg is contested. 1903 The Royal Danish egg. 1909 The Alexander III commemorative egg. I went to college beside that museum in Boston that got robbed. They never found the thieves or the paintings. The famous Gardner Museum theft. No one knows what happened to the paintings still. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was one of the largest. https://www.smith-art.com/smart-news/5-things-know-about-art-heist-180977448/art-heist-7. There was a really good Netflix documentary on it a few years back. Tomb of Alexander the Great. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Funny thing is, they're all probably buried in Alexandria beneath the modern city. I saw a documentary recently where an archaeologist was looking for his tomb and dug in a park in Alexandria, finding a bust is Alexander buried very deep in further collapsed caverns, but those caverns are under blocks of flats and loads of development, so I've no idea if they'll ever be able to explore them. A large part of Pompeii. What they have excavated so far takes an hour to walk through, but a huge part of it remains hidden. This is because they've found that being discovered is causing more damage to the remains than 2,000 years of being hidden beneath the pumice, and they are waiting for new technology to preserve it. I upvoted this because in the company I work for we developed a maintenance system for the archaeological park of Pompeii, and I'm involved in these things. Pompeii is fascinating. King John's crown jewels. lost while crossing the Wash on the east coast of England. Over 800 years ago. I'm surprised this is so far down. Maybe they were found and melted down, or never lost and just stole. If they're still out there and are discovered, they would be worth a fortune. This one really isn't talked about as much as it should. In 1996, billionaire couple Marvin and Kay Lickman, who collected tons upon tons of priceless items, art, chess sets, Fabergé eggs, etc., were murdered by a glass installer that they hired. Before burning the house down, the glass installer made off with as much of the couple's riches as he could haul away. Shortly after, he tried to flee to avoid prosecution, and before he was caught, 3 men involved with the salvage operation at the scene were arrested for peddling items that were salvaged and they stole. Most of the Lickman's collection, including the items stolen by the glass installer who murdered them, have never been found. That's pretty fucked up. Everyone was trying to get some. Heirloom seal of the realm, or the Imperial Chinese seal. Supposedly worth billions. Irish crown jewels. Likewise, the original English crown jewels were lost or sold after the Civil War. Tomb of Genghis Khan. I recently read a biography of Khan called Genghis Khan and the Creation of the Modern World. In it, the authors conclude that, most likely, he didn't have a tomb, as others here have said. What he did have was his spirit banner, which was held as a treasured artifact by the Mongolian peoples. Whether or not it truly belonged to him, I'll leave to experts. It was seized by the Soviets during the invasion of Mongolia in the 1920s, and disappeared. Likely, IMO, destroyed by the Soviets in an attempt to quell resistance there. Likely but not definitively. Stole Nazi artifacts buried deep in the Polish countryside. I found too many weapons as a kid, late 90s, and the stories from grandfather's finds as a child. Some crazy things must be stashed in the most bizarre places. If you do a little haggling, you can buy the crazy things from the proprietor of the stall in the bazaar. About 83% of the cash is from Byron Price, The Secret. Check out the show Expedition Unknown. There's several episodes focused on the search, most notably the Boston Puzzle, where they helped search and documented the find. The enormous golden menorah from the Second Temple. The Romans took it after sacking Jerusalem. Some people think it's being hidden by the Vatican, but I think more likely it was melted down and will never be found. It is far more likely that it is somewhere in modern-day Turkey. According to Procopius, Belisarius reclaimed it from the Vandals in Tunis in 533, who had looted it in the sacking of Rome a century earlier. Though there is no record of it being sent back to Constantinople, so it might still be in Tunis. AskReddit, the sarcophagus of Olav Haraldsson. Remember the Christian Viking from Vikings, Valhalla? Yeah, he was real. After his death, he became a saint and a bridge between Old Norse faith and Christianity. He was eventually laid to rest in a jewel-adorned sarcophagus in the Nidaros Cathedral. It was Northern Europe's biggest destination for pilgrims until the Reformation. When Norwegians broke with the Catholic Church, Olavskrinnet, maybe with Olav still in it, disappeared. Buried under the cathedral? Sent to Denmark? Nobody knows. Same thing probably happened to it as happened to any ancient or medieval relic in Northern Europe during the Reformation, deliberately destroyed and melted down by the newly Protestant kings to fund wars they ultimately didn't win. The Amber Room, Russian, Tr. Yantarnaya Komnata, German, Bernsteinzimmer, was a chamber decorated in amber panels backed with gold leaf and mirrors, located in the Catherine Palace of Tsarskoye Selo near St. Petersburg. From Wikipedia, https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/amber_. People are still looking, mostly in Poland. How do you lose a room? That guy who accidentally threw away his Bitcoin hard drive and it still hasn't even recovered from landfill. Actually, there are probably a bunch of Bitcoin hard drive stories like this. Modern day treasure. I used to be slightly obsessed by this until I started working on a recycling startup and learned what actually happens at a landfill. The link below says it all. In short, it's a goner. https://www.reddit.com/r/toolgifs/s/b8mvirkey. A few of the original Fabergé eggs are still missing. Apparently one was found at a garage sale in the US a while back. There was one found at an antiques flea market in the American Midwest too. No one has any idea how it got there. https://www.jc-conline.com/editorial-article/33-million-faberg-egg-found-at-flea-market/ The burial site of Genghis Khan is still unknown. It was not documented on purpose and it worked pretty well. Not document on purpose is a kind way to say they killed everyone who worked on it. The hoard of Aztec gold stolen and lost by Hernán Cortés and the Spanish conquistadors during the Night of Sorrows. While trying to escape from Tenochtitlan in the night with the gold, the conquistadors were set upon by the Aztecs. During the fighting and confusion, it's thought the gold fell into Lake Texcoco. Hernán Cortés escaped with only a small number of his soldiers and the gold has never been found. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/la_notch_trist. It's never going to be found considering that one of the most populous cities in the world sits on what was Lake Texcoco. $190 million worth of Bitcoin on a hard drive in a particular landfill. https://news.bitcoin.com/man-plans-to-do-city-over-refusal-to-dig-for-75000-lost-bitcoin-in-landfill/hash. I'll even go a step further. 1.1 million Bitcoin are sitting in their creators, Satoshi's, wallet, untouched. No one knows who he is or if he's even alive. I want to clarify that one more time. Not $1 million worth of Bitcoin. 1.1 million Bitcoin. That's $48,334,539,000. Almost all Homo erectus pekinensis remains. They were packed up during WWII with the intention of shipping them from China to the US for safekeeping, but the ship supposedly carrying the fossils was attacked and ran aground. Photographs and drawings of the originals still exist, but the actual fossils were never found. I read about this just recently. Fascinating. Not really a treasure. But currently the US is still missing 6 nuclear bombs. One might have been found by a Soviet sub, but that is not confirmed. Missing? How TF do you lose a nuke, bro? Watch Expedition Unknown on HBO Max. Josh Gates goes after a different lost treasure in most episodes. I love Josh Gates. I also love how he just keeps putting the same show on TV every year with a different name. The original Amber Room in Catherine Palace near to St. Petersburg was dismantled and stolen by the German army when they ransacked the palace. It was subsequently rebuilt and restored after the war, but the original panels have never been recovered. There was a book that hinted at a handful of jeweled figurines hidden all over the planet, and I believe only some of them have been declared found. Crimson Gem of Sitorak? Edit. Thanks all. I didn't realize it was found. There was a guy that hid a substantial amount of gold out in the Mojave Desert, I think, and nobody has found it yet. A bunch of people have died trying to find it. Forrest Fenn? Not sure if same guy or just similar story. He hid I think $1 million in gold, jewels, trinkets somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. He lived in NM. just recently found in the past couple years. However, I believe there is some debate that the treasure was just publicity for his book, which contained needed clues. However, the deaths looking for it were real. The stolen works from Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Awesome documentary on that. The lost history books of Tacitus, Livy, Aristotle, and Claudius. The lost treasure of King John. In 1216, bad King John, widely recorded as incompetent, weak and evil to the point that he's now best known as the regal villain in the stories of Robin Hood, fled from his enemies across the muddy, sandy stretches of the tidal estuary of the Wash. The incoming tide waters caught his baggage train, and the wagons and their contents, including the king's treasure, were lost. King John was the sovereign signatory of the Magna Carta, an early step in the Constitution of the United Kingdom, and succeeded the Crusader King Richard, to whom he was unfavorably compared. The entirety of D.B. Cooper's loot. One of my favorite conspiracy theories is that Tommy Wiseau is D.B. Cooper. He would have been 18 or 19 in 1971. Nobody knows anything about him from before he just suddenly walked into the studio and funded the room entirely in cash, and he won't talk about his past or where he got the money at all. Yamashita's gold. There have been some finds, but between alleged booby traps and impossible to decode maps, they are lost in jungle of the Philippines. Not that it isn't found, but the Forbidden Vault, Vault B, in the Padmanabhaswamy Temple in India remains unopened and is thought to contain treasure to a wealth of $1 trillion. Other vaults opened there were found to contain 18 feet gold chains, a solid gold sheaf weighing 500 kilograms, and a 3.5 feet tall solid pure golden idol of Mahavishnu, studded with hundreds of diamonds and rubies and other precious stones. The reason they don't open Vault B? It's said to be cursed. Read more here. https://en.wikipedia.org/padmanabhaswamy_temple?w_prof/1. I'll risk the curse and take one for the team. Mongol treasures in Afghanistan. There are several myths about it being buried there. Does a Honjo Masamune count? That's my answer. Best guess is it's collecting dust among the junk of a dead or dying WWII vet, and the family has absolutely no idea what they have, and if they're at all aware of Grandpa's war trophy, they're assuming it must be one of the mass-produced swords the Japanese made back then. The last panel of the Adoration of the Mystic Lamb, the central altar piece of the St. Bavo Cathedral in Ghent. It was painted in 1492, but has been lost for quite a while. A replica now hangs in its place. No one knows where Cornwallis's surrender sword from the Battle of Yorktown is. Likely buried with him in India, as he probably got it back after the surrender. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. My late father lived in Boston and had an interesting last couple of decades of his life. He was in the US Federal Witness Protection Program when he died of natural causes. I always believed there was a chance that he was involved in that heist, if for no other reason than he knew the museum well and had said for years that their security was a joke. After he died, I spoke with two of his handlers at the FBI, one of whom wound up in prison for a while for being part of some conspiracy. They both said they are confident that my father had nothing to do with the robbery. I got the same story from a prominent retired member of Boston's Irish Mafia. All three connected him to a jewel robbery that he was never charged for, but said they had looked into the Stewart Gardner theft and ruled him out. Given that a few people got messages beyond my father's grave about property that was stashed all over the place, I tend now to think that, if he had been involved, we would know by now. The theft happened 33 years ago, and there are $10.1 million in rewards on offer for information leading to the safe return of the stolen property. Mansa Musa's gold. Didn't he invest most of it in a science victory speedrun? Lost Dutchman mine? I think it was somewhere in Death Valley, maybe been a long time since I heard it mentioned. It would be in the Superstition Mountains east of Phoenix, AZ. People still search for it, and occasionally one of them has to get airlifted out. Not the most forgiving terrain, but makes it easy to believe something could still be hidden there. A huge snake statue whose reproduction was at an ancient Mexico exposition in the 19th century along with several other reproductions. It's depicted here on this drawing of the exposition. https://imgur.com/a/hixz4gi right square bracket open bracket https://imgur,hix4g. We know what artifacts the other reproductions are based on, save for the snake one. It could be a fabrication, but it would seem strange for it to be the single one off the whole exhibit to be made up. Cincinnati, Ohio bank loot. The guy who hid the cash died in a plane crash along with 4 FBI agents who were on their way to retrieve it. Crash that killed 4 FBI agents and bank embezzler. Apparently Oak Island. Lol, yes. Had to stop watching. A bunch of old boys being super excited to get wood became too comical. When Alexander the Great was returning from India laden with uncountable riches plundered, he decided to lead his troops through the Judosian desert, emulating some ancient queen who did the journey and barely survived. It is a brutal environment. The army was reduced to a slog through hell, moving on average only 5-7 miles a day amidst endless harsh dunes and dire heat. The 130-mile trek took them nearly a month. At least a third of his army perished and conditions got so bad that Alexander turned a blind eye and even eventually ordered the slaughter of the baggage train animals so their blood could be drank. Who knows how much treasure lie forever buried in those dunes. There are some particular artifacts taken from the Mughal ship Ganges Soy by pirate Henry Avery that haven't been recovered. The original Declaration of Independence is actually in my basement. The US government still doesn't know they have a replica. Next you'll be saying you're going to kidnap the president. Tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The missing fountainheads from the zodiac clock at the old summer palace in China. I believe there are 6 still missing. The last 2 that were found were auctioned for $31 and $40 million each. Edit. Link https://www.antiquousandhearts.com/has-another-old-summer-palace-zodiac-fountain-head-been-found/ Yay. A reason for my inner Titanic nerd to come out. Here we go. Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, translated and published in 1860 by Edward Fitzgerald. Enclosed in an oak slipcase, the Rubaiyat's ornate cover of Moroccan leather inlaid with a depiction of 3 peacocks, their tail feathers spread dramatically, including gold embroidery in the details, as well as a Persian ud, similar to lute, designed of inlaid wood and ivory. The small and delicate jewels which encrusted the book's binding included more than 1,000 emeralds, rubies, amethysts, and topazes, each set separately in gold. It's at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Books on Titanic were stored in the aft cargo near the rudder. The aft of the ship was obliterated when it hit the ocean floor, and as it was sinking it spun around at a high speed, tossing shit everywhere so the book could theoretically be buried under the sand hundreds of miles away from the actual debris field or sink site.